Hi everyone. I am here for my second weekly report, so thank you for having me and thank you for coming back. I should forewarn you that I am a little loopy because I haven't been sleeping very well this week. I feel like, energetically speaking, there's like electricity inside of us all. There's so much thought, so many things going on inside that we're really ready to externalize but don't quite have a way of doing so yet. And in my case, that manifests as trying to make plans and consume more information all the time. And that stops me from being restful. So, on that note, one of the things I was thinking about, which probably seems extremely random for a YouTube video that is essentially a tarot and astrology forecast for the week to come, I was thinking about the Library of Alexandria. Now, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Library of Alexandria's history, but the Library of Alexandria essentially was destroyed by fire in 48 BC at the time of Julius Caesar. And this library was the original university. It was the place where all scholars came together to share knowledge, and at its peak it supposedly contained 400 to 800,000 scrolls of information that had been transcribed and collected from every single traveler, every single ship that had come into the port of Alexandria, prototypes, diagrams, just every bit of information. I mean, we'll never know, unfortunately, what was there. But some people with a more conspiratorial mindset believe that it was destroyed by Julius Caesar in an effort to avoid a certain type of society from developing that probably would have been very radical to the one that we know today. Again, I'm not going to get into the specifics of that because I don't want to seem like I'm a conspiracy theorist, even if I kind of... Well, I don't think I'm a conspiracy theorist, I just know that there's a lot of bullshit that we're taught. Anyway, moving on. But the reason why I was thinking so much about that was because I was thinking about the mendacious aspect of our current institutions in power. And I don't know if anybody else is following what's taking place in Parliament in the UK and what is probably going to happen next year during the election run-up in the United States. But I feel like it's like we have so much knowledge at our fingertips and we have such power within ourselves, self-empowerment. Why are we relying on these fucking idiots all the time to make decisions for ourselves? This is a time for us to go inside, figure out our strengths, and then stop paying attention to all of this noise. It's just preventing us from focusing on what we're really here to do. And that is actually to love and experience joy. And now we're going to talk about how in the next week these energies can help us to do that. So let's get into the astrological aspects for this coming week. What we're facing right now is the Virgo stellium. We're still in that situation of having 5 planets in Virgo. We are also under the influence of Jupiter square Neptune, which will take place for the 3rd and final time this year on the Equinox, the 21st of September. But the way that these energies are working right now, in the lead up to that, is that you have this desire to move forward, to take action. Dreams are ready to be birthed. We are ready to move from the head through the heart to the outside world and make things happen. But Virgo, and I love Virgo, I love Virgos. I actually have a lot of Virgo in my own chart. And I'm also a cusper, so Leo, Virgo cusp. And well, let's just put it in the kindest way possible. Virgo is a perfectionist, and Virgo wants us to make sure that we have dotted all of our I's and crossed all of our T's before we can make that final leap. This is sort of like the final lap. We have to move through this energy, and mainly internally, and make sure that all of these big ideas that we want to move forward with, this new era that we want to move into in our lives, that we have been contemplating for a very long time, but in particular with these aspects since January of this year, we want to make sure that we are fully ready to take on whatever lies ahead. I think back to January. It was January 13th, I believe, was the first Jupiter square Neptune. It's sort of like a pregnancy. Let's imagine that that was conception, that the ideas were birthed. If you go back to January and you think about where you are now, a lot of the things that we're looking to move into in our lives probably had some kind of pivotal stem in that time. June was the second of those squares, and I believe that took place towards the end of June. And that was actually kind of like the second trimester, well, just before the second trimester of a pregnancy, where you haven't quite gotten to the point where you're like completely sure and that everything's going well with the pregnancy. And there would have been maybe some hurdles, some things that made us suddenly realize that, oh shit, we're not really actually ready for this, and what have we done, and how is this gonna like play out, and do I really have any clue how this is gonna affect me? And you know, the idea of wanting to go backwards, but you know, you can't because you've already planted the seeds and it's too late to change that. That could sound very wrong, all of that. So just take the pregnancy thing as a very loose analogy. And now we're coming up to the third and final one, which is all about giving birth. And not that I would know this, but I don't think, from what I've seen and what I've heard from other people who have given birth, that as much as we love the idea of what's to come after the birth, hopefully, there's a lot of fear, a lot of uncertainty about facing the pain of childbirth, first and foremost, and also the responsibility that comes with becoming a parent. I have one friend who once told me that when they gave birth, it was like shitting a watermelon. Take that as you want. I'm just putting that in there for a little bit of humor. And if she's watching this, I'm smiling, and the camera's a little lower. Anyway, what we're really in the position of doing is figuring out how we are going to close out this cycle so that we can move on to the next. And with the harvest moon coming up on the 14th, the full moon in Pisces, we're also looking at a very, very, very deeply emotional moon. And this sort of coincides with all of this need to kind of close things out, because I think we're going to find in the next week that there are just a few things that we need to revisit, or that we want to revisit, before we let go of them for good. And the process of doing that is going to be a little tricky, maybe, for us. And maybe provoke emotions in us that we didn't quite remember that we had, or that we'd rather have forgotten. But I do think that in doing so, we're also going to move into a place of understanding better where we came from. And that's going to finally allow us, along with coinciding with Saturn going direct on the 18th of September, after a pretty, I will say personally, a nasty retrograde, things are gonna just sort of shift and open up. So I think we're all ready for that. And the final aspect of astrology to look forward to is that Venus will soon be becoming an evening star, and that's gonna brighten up our lives from an emotional perspective. That's not quite ready to happen yet, but it will be happening very soon. Okay, so let's get into the tarot for this week. I feel like we are going to get some more emotionally based cards this week than situational, as I really do think that this whole period of time is about going inwards and seeking out as much balance as we can possibly give ourselves before we move forward. Let's see what comes out for us. We've got the Two of Pentacles, juggling, being in the position where we aren't particularly balanced, and again we need to make those efforts to dot those I's and cross those T's before we move forward. We also had the Three of Wands come out. That's waiting for our ships to come in. Essentially the idea that, again, this is a final period of gestation. It's like, it really is that last lap, that last period of just figuring out how we are going to eliminate poverty consciousness. And the good thing is, when I said poverty consciousness, we got the Queen of Pentacles. The Queen of Pentacles is pretty much everything but poverty consciousness. So hopefully we won't be too affected by those negative thoughts, but it may take a little bit of a tower moment for us to get there. Things have to break down before we can move forward, and this is kind of our last opportunity to do that. And unless we let the towers crumble that don't really serve our greater purpose, we get stuck. And the universe does it for us. Oh, hello, Henry. It's my cat. He came along to bring us the Ace of Pentacles. The Ace of Pentacles basically means that once we let go of that poverty consciousness, the universe, as the saying goes, conspires to assist us at the moment of commitment. So let's let it go. I keep seeing the Five of Pentacles, but it's not coming out, so I figure that means that the poverty consciousness is about to be resolved. It's the second ace, the Ace of Cups. That's the heart. That is the cup full, the emotions balanced, and the ability to then go out into the world with abundance to offer whatever we have to that world. I just love that my cat has decided to join us. And what do we have? A third ace, the Ace of Wands, and the Five of Cups. Now what this says to me is we're ready to take action. We have our ideas now need to be introduced into the world. Sorry about that. My neighbors were making an enormous amount of noise outside, so Henry's no longer with us in any case. But we were on the Ace of Wands. It's about inspiration. It's coming into a place where we finally have that inspiration to move forward. All this inner work, I mean, how amazing is it that we go from this current tower energy, which is really, as far as I'm concerned, probably an inner struggle. It is eliminating those final aspects of low self-esteem, poverty consciousness, things that do not serve us to be able to move forward in our greatest power. And as soon as that's done, bam, bam, and bam, we get three, we'll see if we get four, but we have 3 aces. I mean, if that isn't a sign of new beginnings, new consciousness, then I don't know what is. I'm gonna pull a couple more cards from this deck, and then we'll clarify them. Well, there we have it. There's that 5 of Pentacles. That is the image of poverty consciousness. When you look at that card, I mean, not only do those people look absolutely miserable, but they're walking around outside. They're not going inside here. The implication is that there's a church there. So either they're walking away from tradition because they don't want to go inside that church, or they're telling themselves that they don't deserve to go inside. That is coming to an end. But the process of getting to that, with the 9 of Wands as a clarifier to that, because they came out at the same time, is essentially that it's a bit of a mind fuck, and that this process in the next week is going to, well, it's not going to be entirely pretty. So give yourselves the chance to serve your higher purpose. Don't take on too much. Like I said, in regards to the astrology, Virgo is not going to let us move forward unless we smooth the edges and fine-tune our perspective. Sorry, I didn't say that I had moved on to clarify these. The star. This deck, unfortunately, with this lighting, does not show up whatsoever. I apologize for that. The star. It's the ultimate wish card. It's essentially what those that believe in divine intervention would see as being represented by that card. It's also another card of intuition. All of these things are about moving into a higher consciousness. Essentially, when you think about consciousness and you think about how we function in life, every time we experience anything that is a tower moment, it forces us to go into our deep subconscious mind and process our experience, and sort of like the great Library of Alexandria, go through all of those scrolls, figure out where we want to put that information and take from the information we already have, and then we move out of that into a higher level of consciousness once that has been processed. And essentially, that is the way that we work. If you think of consciousness as being sort of like a pyramid, it's like we move, every time we move into a higher level of consciousness, we have to go down into the depths of the subconscious mind in order to enrich ourselves, to be able to come back out into the world as a conscious being and put ourselves into the position of experiencing more shit that then has to be processed all over again. The Knight of Pentacles. I am just seeing the Knight of Pentacles as confirmation of the carrier of this Ace of Pentacles. I know we had that last week, so there's a lot coming into us. There's a lot of new elements of foundations, and we have to keep our eyes and ears and minds open to receive those things. But in order to do that, Nine of Pentacles. Ugh, I really wish I could do a better job of showing you those, but the white is just there's too much of a glare. The Nine of Pentacles is telling us that we have to seek satisfaction within ourselves first before we're able to receive. And as I said, this is a very short time period. This is a reading for the upcoming week, not necessarily for the long term. So we're talking about this process being immediate. So if you're not feeling particularly introspective, now would be the time to do so. Because what do we have? The Ace of Cups and the Lovers. Now, as much as I'd love to tell everybody that that means that you're about to fall in love, you could. I mean, if that's the way you're inclined, then that's absolutely what this would indicate. But aside from being the fourth ace that we've received, albeit a double of one that we already did receive, the cups being the suit of emotions, so therefore indicating that we are filling up that emotional cup. That's what this whole reading has really been about, and the astrology. It's about filling up our own cups so that we can move forward as whole beings. The Lovers in tarot generally represents more a choice, an informed choice, because the reality is that what the Lovers really indicates, as opposed to the Two of Wands or the Two of Swords, is choosing to do what we love. We know what we love, and how many times in our lives do we actually do what we love? I mean, that's the big question, and that may be what all of this is about, figuring out how you are not allowing yourself to do what you love in your life. And I'm not talking necessarily giant ambitions, you know. I'm speaking more metaphysically, because at the end of the day, it has to start there before the giant ambitions can take hold in the outside world anyway. So the inner work to be done is essentially figuring out how to love ourselves in order to be able to do what we love. Sorry, that just sounded so simple, and I certainly have plenty of work to do in the next week myself, if I'm going to get there. I'm just going to take 3 more clarifiers from this, and then we're going to take an Animal Spirit Oracle card, and I will read you the advice from whichever animal comes out. What's going on with this deck? I have like cards that are like backwards and cards that are upside down, and I don't read reversals usually. Nice. It is the Ace of Wands. Another ace. Inspiration. It's time to move forward with your ideas. Justice and the Six of Pentacles. Those are going to be our last cards. And I like it. Because essentially, Six of Pentacles is getting to that place where you are able to flourish and therefore become generous. And let's face it, the core of love is in generosity. It is feeling like your cup is full enough that you can give. And justice basically means that we get our just desserts and that we are about to come into reaping the rewards of all of our hard work, which I know I'm ready for. What I love about these cards, aside from the fact that they are giant, I mean, check it out, that's my hand, that's the size of the cards. They're pretty hard to shuffle. But they are deeply contemplative, and when you pull from the deck, whether or not you are coming at it from a divine or esoteric perspective, there's a philosophical message to it that, well, it just gives food for thought. And we got this beautiful card, the Hummingbird Spirit. Be here now. I'm gonna just figure out which page it's on. 4. Hummingbird Spirit, number 34. Be here now. The hummingbird's wings beat so swiftly it can hover in seeming stillness as it drinks deeply from a flower. Hummingbird Spirit comes to remind you that the beauty and sweetness of life is in the eternal now, the timeless present. Here and now, you are becoming the person you wish to be, to have the experiences you wish to have. Focus your energy on the flower before you, for what you desire is being provided. Yes, there are blossoms everywhere. The choices can be dazzling. Hummingbird Spirit's message is that you have no need to go about in search of something better, for all that you require and desire is before you. You will know this as you become still, feeling your connection to Spirit, who loves you unconditionally and will always provide for you. Nectar is everywhere, but Hummingbird Spirit is here to remind you that flying from flower to flower and being all over the place wastes precious energy. Be still, be here, now, in the present moment, enjoying the sweetness and sustenance available to you. Focus on one flower today. Just one. Nectar is there for you, and Hummingbird Spirit's message is that wherever you put your attention, there your energy flows. Are you focused on the sweetness or on finding something better somewhere else, always yearning and feeling that life is not enough and that you are not enough? All you seek is right here, right now. Appreciate the present and you will see that you are where you need to be and enjoying what you are entitled to enjoy in this timeless and perfect moment. Now let's put that in perspective of the reading and the astrological energies. I would say what that's pretty much telling us is that it's confirmation that we need to have that quiet time with ourselves to sort through these last elements of contemplation that will allow us to move into our plentiful futures. So take that with you into meditation. So I wanted to end sort of tying all this together, thinking about coming from the Library of Alexandria, so we're talking about ancient Egypt, and how in ancient Egypt, at the time they believed that the heart was the vessel that contained our intellect. They used to actually remove the brains at the time of burial, And it wasn't until 4 BC, at the time of Hippocrates, that it was established that the brain contained our intellect. But maybe in so many ways we've become so draconian in our understanding of biology as taking precedence over intuitive aspects of ourselves, that we fail to understand that there's actually a connection between the two that has to always exist. And therefore, to see the heart and the mind as two separate things is to fundamentally be missing the point of life. And I have a feeling that this last stage of contemplation has a lot to do with that. And on that note, I wanted to end, as I like to do, with a quote from Anthony de Mello. If you're unfamiliar with him, he was a Jesuit priest, born in Bombay. He died in 1987. He was probably essentially one of the major pioneers of the New Age self-help movement as we know it, in the sense that his teachings were deeply meditative and contemplative and universal and really beautiful. And in alignment with what we were just talking about regarding the heart and the mind, I wanted to pick this. People mistakenly assume that their thinking is done in their head. It is actually done by their heart, which first dictates the conclusion, then commands the heart to provide the reasoning that will defend it. And I think that's what we all have to do now. So, on that note, I'll leave you with those thoughts. I hope this was helpful to you, and I look forward to seeing you next week.
Rainstorms from which we grew so rarely for Californian debuts. Through desert winds I could feel your breath, your absence snarling from me a sudden death. I'd unwind if we could be. I'd bargain for rushed history that you should already know me. I'd be your shade, I'd be your sun, I'd be your mystery.